I said no when my parents ordered me to quit my job and become my golden brother's full-time babysitter. Dad caught me outside the office, shoved me into a wall, and snapped, "Your life belongs to this family, or you're dead to us." I went back inside, reported him, pressed charges, and watched the whole clan erupt. I was halfway through adjusting my badge lanyard when my father's hand connected with my shoulder and slammed me sideways into the stone pillar outside my office building. The impact rattled my teeth. My phone clattered onto the pavement. A woman in a navy blazer froze mid-step on the sidewalk, coffee cup suspended in the air, staring. My father leaned in close, his face red and twisted. "You think you get to ignore me? Your life belongs to this family, or you're dead to us. Do you understand what that means?" I understood perfectly. What he didn't understand was that he'd just committed assault on camera, on corporate property, in front of witnesses, and the person he grabbed happened to work 3 floors up in the department that investigated exactly this kind of thing. My name is Maya. I'm 28. I work as a compliance analyst in the human resources department of a regional financial firm downtown. My job involves reviewing employee conduct violations, workplace safety incidents, and harassment claims. I know what constitutes battery. I know what counts as coercion. I know exactly how security footage gets pulled and what happens when someone commits a crime at our building entrance. My father knew none of that because he'd never bothered to ask what I actually did for work. To him, my job was just noise. Background static. Something I did to fill time until my real purpose kicked in, which was apparently to become my older brother's unpaid live-in nanny. That confrontation outside the revolving glass doors wasn't random. It was the boiling point of 2 months of pressure, threats, and escalating demands that I abandoned my career to serve the family's golden child. Let me back up and show you how a family convinces itself that one person's entire life should be sacrificed so another person doesn't have to pay for childcare. I grew up knowing I was second place. Not in a subtle way. Not in a maybe I'm imagining this way. In a way where my parents literally told me, out loud, at 12 years old, "Your brother is going to do important things. You need to understand your role is to support him." Derek is 4 years older than me. He's charming, confident, and has coasted through life on a combination of our parents' money and my unpaid labor. When we were kids, I did his book reports while he played video games. When he was in high school, I covered for him when he snuck out to parties so he wouldn't get grounded before his college interviews. I remember one specific night when I was 14. Derek had snuck out to meet his girlfriend, and our parents woke up around midnight asking where he was. I told them he was at a friend's house working on a group project. My father looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and went back to bed. The next morning, Derek gave me a high five and went back to doing nothing. No thank you. No acknowledgement that I'd saved him from being grounded for months. Just an assumption that covering for him was my job. When he bombed his first semester at a state school, my parents pulled him out, sent him to a private college, and paid the full tuition. When I graduated high school with a 3.9 GPA and got into the same private college, they told me I could go to community college or figure it out myself because we already invested in Derek's education. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table with my acceptance letter in my hand, asking if there was any way they could help with even part of the tuition. My mother shook her head. "We can't afford 2 college educations, Maya. You're smart. You'll find a way." Meanwhile, Derek had a brand new laptop, a meal plan, and a car my parents bought him so he could drive to campus. I went to community college. I worked part-time at a grocery store, then full-time at a bank call center. I transferred credits to a public university, finished my degree in business administration, and landed an entry-level job in HR at the firm where I still work. I paid every dollar myself. I remember the first time I saw my student loan balance after graduation. It felt like staring at a mountain. But I made a payment plan, stuck to it, and chipped away at it month by month while living in the cheapest apartment I could find. Derek, meanwhile, graduated with a communications degree he barely used, worked a few low-effort sales jobs, and eventually married Jen, a woman whose entire personality was built around the idea that motherhood made her superior to people with actual careers. Their wedding was a huge event. My parents paid for everything. The venue, the catering, the photographer, the honeymoon to Hawaii. When I got engaged a year later to someone I'd been dating seriously, I called my mom to share the news. She said, "That's wonderful, honey. Are you planning something small?" Translation: don't expect us to pay for anything. My engagement ended 6 months later for unrelated reasons, but the message was clear. Derek got the full family investment. I got well wishes and reminders to be practical. When Derek and Jen had their first kid, my parents were ecstatic. Finally, a grandchild. This is what family legacy looks like. They bought Derek and Jen a house. Not a down payment. The whole house. For bedrooms in a decent suburb, handed over like a participation trophy. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from work, budgeting groceries, driving a car with 140,000 miles on it. Nobody offered me a house. When I got my compliance analyst promotion 2 years ago, I called my mom to share the news. Her response: "That's nice, honey. Derek and Jen are trying for baby number 2. Isn't that exciting?" That was the pattern. Anything I did was nice. Anything Derek did was the future of this family. I learned to stop calling with updates. I focused on work, kept my head down, and built a quiet, stable life where I didn't owe anyone anything. I started putting money into savings. I got my car paid off. I worked on getting promoted again. I made friends at work who actually celebrated my accomplishments instead of redirecting the conversation to someone else. For a while, the distance felt healthy. Then Jen got pregnant again, and my parents decided my quiet, stable life was over. The first time my mother brought it up, she framed it like a compliment. "Maya, you're so organized and responsible. Jen's going to need help when the baby comes. We were thinking you could take some time off work and stay with them for a few months." I was sitting in my parents' living room during Sunday dinner. Derek and Jen were on the couch, smiling like this was already decided. "I can't take months off work," I said carefully. "I just got promoted. I'm in the middle of a compliance audit project." My mother waved her hand like I'd mentioned the weather. "Work will always be there. Family is more important. Besides, Derek and Jen can't afford full-time childcare for 2 kids." I looked at Derek. "You own your house outright. You don't have a mortgage. How can you not afford childcare?" He shrugged. "We have other expenses. Car payments. The kids' future college funds. We're not all lucky enough to have jobs that pay well." I stared at him. I made $52,000 a year. He and Jen had 0 housing costs, and he worked in tech sales making at least 70. But pointing that out would make me difficult. So I tried a different angle. "I'm sure you can find a good daycare or a nanny service." Jen's face hardened. "I don't trust strangers with my children. They need family. Someone who actually cares." My father, who'd been quiet until then, set down his fork. "Maya, this isn't a debate. You're going to help your brother. That's what family does." I felt my stomach twist, but I kept my voice even. "I'm not quitting my job." Silence dropped over the table like a wet towel. My father's expression shifted into something colder. "We'll talk about this later." Over the next 6 weeks, later, turned into relentless pressure. Phone calls where my mother cried about how selfish I was. Texts from Derek saying I was abandoning my nephew and niece. A voicemail from my father telling me I was spitting on everything this family stands for. Jen posted on social media about how some people care more about paychecks than children, with a passive-aggressive crying emoji. I blocked her. Then the tactics escalated. My mother started calling my apartment during work hours, leaving long voicemails about how disappointed she was. When I stopped answering, she called my work number. Karen, my manager, had to gently tell me that my mother had tried to reach me through the main office line, claiming it was a family emergency. There was no emergency, just more demands. Derek sent me a budget breakdown showing how much daycare would cost versus free family help. He'd highlighted the numbers in red like I was supposed to feel guilty that my time had value. My father sent me a long email with the subject line "Priorities," explaining that my job was replaceable, but my nephew and niece would only be young once. I didn't respond to any of it. Then my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced one Saturday morning. "You're making this so much harder than it needs to be. Just quit. Stay with Derek and Jen. Help with the kids. It's temporary." "How temporary?" I asked. She blinked. "Well, until the kids are in school, probably." "That's years, Mom. I'd be throwing away my career. You can get another job later. You're young. You'll figure it out." I closed the door. She stood outside for 10 minutes knocking and calling my name before she finally left. She called my father. 3 days later, my father called me and said if I didn't agree by the end of the week, I was no longer welcome at family events. I didn't call back. The next Sunday, I wasn't invited to dinner. The Sunday after that, My mother sent a group text to the extended family saying I'd chosen career over family, and they should pray for me. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years started messaging me asking what was going on. Aunts I barely knew sent me Bible verses about honoring your parents. One uncle sent a message that just said, "Shame on you." I muted the group chat. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they'd eventually realize I wasn't going to cave and they'd move on. I was wrong, because my father wasn't the kind of man who accepted no for an answer. And he decided that if I wouldn't come to him, he'd come to me. It was a Tuesday. I'd worked through lunch to finish a report on a workplace safety violation and decided to take a late break to grab a sandwich from the deli across the street. I was walking back, badge clipped to my jacket, balancing my food and my phone, when I heard my name. Not called. Barked. I turned and saw my father standing on the sidewalk in a dress shirt and slacks, hands in his pockets, face set in that expression I knew too well. The one that said he'd driven across town to deliver a verdict. "We need to talk," he said. "I'm on my lunch break," I replied, starting toward the building entrance. He stepped in front of me. "Your brother and Jen are drowning. She's 7 months pregnant. Your nephew's in preschool 3 days a week, and they can't manage. You're done stalling. You're moving in with them next week." People were walking past us. A delivery driver unloading boxes. A woman on her phone. A security guard visible through the glass doors at the front desk. I took a breath. "I'm not quitting my job. I've told you that." His jaw tightened. "You don't get to tell me no. Your life belongs to this family, or you're dead to us. Do you understand that?" I stepped to the side, reaching for the door. He grabbed my arm and yanked me backward. Hard. My shoulder hit the stone pillar next to the entrance with enough force that my vision sparked. My phone and sandwich hit the pavement. Pain shot down my back. The woman on her phone stopped mid-sentence and stared. The delivery driver froze, box in his hands. Inside the lobby, the security guard stood up from his desk. My father leaned in, his fingers digging into my shoulder, his breath hot against my face. "Do you understand me? We own you. You exist to serve this family. If you walk away from that, you are nothing." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I looked past him, directly at the security guard through the glass, and held his gaze. The guard picked up the phone on his desk. My father must have seen my expression shift because he let go and stepped back, his face still twisted in anger. "Think very carefully about what you do next. You want to be dead to us? Fine. Keep walking into that building and see what happens." I bent down, picked up my phone, left the ruined sandwich on the ground, and walked through the revolving door without looking back. My heart was pounding. My shoulder throbbed. But my mind was perfectly clear. I didn't go back to my desk. I went straight to the department 3 floors up. My own department. The one that handles workplace violence. My manager, Karen, saw the look on my face and the way I was holding my shoulder and immediately pulled me into a conference room. What happened? I told her everything. Not a summarized version. The full story. The months of pressure to quit. The threats. The group text campaigns. The confrontation outside the building. The exact words my father had used. The shove into the wall. Karen didn't interrupt. When I finished, she didn't say, "That's a personal matter." She said, "That happened on company property. In front of witnesses. That's assault. We're documenting this, and you're going to decide how far you want to take it." She called our head of security. Within 20 minutes, they'd pulled footage from 3 cameras. The exterior camera showing my father grabbing me and shoving me into the pillar. The lobby camera showing the guard's reaction and the witnesses stopping to stare. The entrance camera showing my body hit the wall and my father leaning in. They played it back for me in the security office. Watching it felt surreal. Seeing myself get thrown into that pillar. Seeing the way my head snapped to the side. Seeing my father's face, contorted with rage, as he leaned in and snarled at me. The security supervisor paused the video. "This is clear cut. If you want to move forward, we have everything we need." Karen took photos of the bruise forming on my shoulder and the scrape on my arm where my jacket had torn. Then she asked the question I'd been asking myself since I walked back through that door. "Do you want to press charges?" I thought about my father's hand on my arm. I thought about his voice in my ear. "We own you." I thought about every time I'd been told my life didn't belong to me. Every time I'd been told my accomplishments didn't matter. Every time I'd been treated like a tool instead of a person. "Yes." Karen nodded. "Then we're calling the police. Not from your cell. From our office line. We'll provide them with everything we have. The officer who responded was a woman in her 30s named Officer Chun. She was professional and direct. She took my statement, reviewed the footage, spoke to the security guard and both witnesses who'd left their contact information at the desk. One of the witnesses was the woman in the navy blazer. Her name was Linda. She worked in accounting at a firm 2 buildings down. She told Officer Chun, "I saw the whole thing. He grabbed her and threw her into that pillar. She didn't fight back. She didn't even yell. She just picked up her phone and walked away. I've never seen anything like it." The delivery driver, whose name was Marcus, gave a similar statement. "I thought he was going to hit her again. The way he was standing over her, yelling. I was about to step in, but then she went inside." Officer Chen asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes. She asked if I felt safe going home. I said I didn't know. Karen offered to have security escort me to my car and said I could take the rest of the week off with pay while the investigation moved forward. I went home. I locked my door, put the chain on, and checked the locks on my windows. I sat on my couch and stared at my phone, which was lighting up with text from my mother. "Your father said you made a scene. Why are you being so dramatic? He barely touched you." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything in a timeline. I went back through months of messages. Every demand to quit, every threat, every guilt trip, every group text, every voicemail. I saved screenshots. I backed up emails. I wrote down dates and exact quotes as best as I could remember them. I created a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence and filled it with everything I had. The next morning, I got an email from Officer Chen saying the case had been assigned to a prosecutor and I'd be contacted within 48 hours. That afternoon, Karen called. "The police are moving forward. They're going to your parents' house this afternoon to make an arrest. I wanted you to know." I thanked her and hung up. I sat in my living room with my laptop open, staring at the clock. At 4:17 p.m., my phone started ringing. My mother. 6 calls in a row. I let them all go to voicemail. When I finally listened, her voice was shaking with fury. "The police just left. They arrested your father. They took him in handcuffs. The neighbors saw everything. Mrs. Patterson from across the street was in her driveway. Everyone saw. How could you do this to us?" I deleted the message. Derek texted, "Are you insane? Dad's got a record now. You need to drop this before it gets worse." I blocked him. Jen sent a message to the family group chat I'd already left, but my cousin Sarah screenshot it and sent it to me. "Maya has officially chosen to destroy this family. We're all praying for her, but we can't support someone who turns on their own father." I didn't respond. What they didn't know, because they'd never bothered to ask, was this. My father wasn't just some random angry dad. He was 2 months into running for a seat on the city council. My father had been campaigning for city council since early spring. He had campaign signs in people's yards. A website with a photo of him in a suit shaking hands with local business owners. A Facebook page full of posts about protecting family values and standing up for what's right. He'd done interviews on local radio about community safety and respect for law and order. He'd attended town halls and neighborhood meetings talking about accountability and setting a good example for our children. His campaign slogan was literally, "Strong families, strong community." And now he had an arrest record for assaulting his own daughter outside her workplace. The police report became public record that same day. A reporter from the local news site who covered city politics found it during a routine check of the court system. By that evening, there was a short article online. City council candidate charged with assault following incident at downtown office building. Police say the alleged victim is the candidate's adult daughter. Dispute reportedly stemmed from family disagreement over employment and childcare responsibilities. They didn't name me. They didn't need to. Everyone in our community who followed local politics knew exactly who it was. The article got shared in neighborhood Facebook groups. Someone screenshot my father's campaign page next to the news headline and posted it with the caption, "This is who wants to represent our community." Within hours, the comments section exploded. People pointing out the irony of a family values candidate being arrested for assault. People sharing their own stories of controlling parents. People tagging the local news station asking for a follow-up. My father's campaign manager, a guy named Todd who'd been posting enthusiastic updates for weeks, went completely silent. Then, 2 days later, Todd posted a statement. "After careful consideration, Mr. Carver has decided to temporarily step back from his campaign to focus on resolving personal family matters. We appreciate everyone's support and ask for privacy during this time. Translation: you're toxic now, and we don't want to be near you. The campaign signs started coming down. The Facebook page stopped posting. The radio station that had interviewed him quietly removed the episode from their podcast feed. My father's arraignment was set for the following week. In the meantime, I met twice with the prosecutor assigned to my case. Her name was Ms. Reyes. She was in her 40s, calm and precise, with the kind of energy that made it clear she'd seen worse than my situation but wasn't going to minimize it. She walked me through what would happen at the arraignment. His lawyer will likely try to frame this as a family dispute. Expect him to say your father regrets the incident and wants to reconcile. Expect him to ask for the charges to be dropped. And if I don't want to drop them, then we proceed. We have the footage. We have the witnesses. We have your statement and the medical photos. This is a strong case. Karen kept me updated on everything happening on the company side. The footage and witness statements had been turned over to the prosecutor's office. Our legal team had sent a formal letter supporting my decision to press charges and noting that the incident constituted a violation of our workplace safety policies. They also issued a trespassing notice banning my father from company property. If he came within 500 feet of the building, security had orders to call the police immediately. My mother left another voicemail. You've humiliated us. Your father's campaign is over. People at church won't even look at us. Mrs. Henderson asked me if it was true. I didn't know what to say. Is this really what you want? I listened to the whole thing and then blocked her number 2. What I wanted was simple. I wanted my father to face the same consequences any other person would face for committing assault. I wanted my family to understand that I was not property, and I wanted to keep my job, my apartment, and my life without having to apologize for it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Pale wood benches, fluorescent lights, a flag in the corner, the kind of space that felt designed to be impersonal. My father sat at the defense table in a suit, his lawyer beside him, his expression tight and furious. My mother sat in the gallery behind him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue like she was the victim. Derek and Jen were there too, whispering to each other and shooting me looks that could have peeled paint. I sat on the other side of the room with Karen, who'd taken the morning off to come with me. The prosecutor, Ms. Reyes, sat at the other table with a folder in front of her and a laptop open. The judge entered. An older man with glasses and a deeply unimpressed expression. Everyone stood. The hearing started. My father's lawyer, a man in his 50s with slicked back hair and an expensive watch, stood and immediately tried to minimize everything. Your Honor, this is a private family dispute that escalated due to heightened emotions on both sides. My client deeply regrets the incident and believes this matter can be resolved without further legal action. He's willing to attend counseling and work toward reconciliation with his daughter. Ms. Reyes didn't even blink. Your Honor, this is not a private dispute. The assault occurred on the property of a private business, in full view of witnesses and security cameras. The defendant physically grabbed the victim, threw her into a stone structure, and verbally threatened her with phrases including, and I quote from the police report, "Your life belongs to this family, or you're dead to us." She pulled up the footage on a screen at the front of the room. The whole courtroom watched my father grab me and slam me into the pillar. Watched him lean in, face twisted, finger jabbing toward my chest. Watched me pick up my phone and walk away while he stood there, hands still clenched. My mother made a small noise behind me. Jen shifted in her seat. The judge's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. Ms. Reyes continued. The victim sustained visible injuries. Medical photographs were taken by her employer's HR department. 2 independent witnesses provided statements corroborating the assault. Security footage shows the incident from multiple angles. This is not a case of conflicting narratives. This is documented, witnessed battery. The judge turned to my father's lawyer. Does your client dispute the events as shown in the footage? The lawyer hesitated. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that physical contact occurred, but he maintains that it was not his intent to cause harm. This was a father attempting to have a difficult conversation with his adult daughter about family responsibilities. The judge leaned back, by shoving her into a wall. Silence. The judge turned to my father. Mr. Carver, did you tell your daughter that her life belongs to your family or she's dead to you? My father's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up a hand. I asked the defendant. My father shifted in his seat. I was upset. I may have said something along those lines, but it wasn't meant literally. And did you physically grab her and push her into a wall? Another pause. Mr. Carver, did you or did you not make physical contact with your daughter in the manner shown in this footage? My father's jaw worked. I touched her shoulder. I didn't think it was that hard. The judge leaned back. You didn't think slamming another human being into a stone pillar was that hard. Let me be very clear. The intent behind your words is irrelevant. The severity you perceived is irrelevant. You used physical force against another adult in an attempt to coerce her into abandoning her employment. That is battery. That is unlawful. The fact that the victim is your daughter does not grant you immunity. In fact, it makes it worse, because you used your position as a parent to justify behavior that would be unacceptable from any other person. He turned to Ms. Reyes. Does the victim wish to make a statement? Ms. Reyes looked at me. I stood. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I love my family. I wanted to have a good relationship with them. But for my entire life, I've been told that my purpose is to serve my brother. When I built a career, it was dismissed as unimportant. When I refused to quit my job to become my brother's unpaid nanny, I was threatened, harassed, and eventually physically assaulted. My father told me my life belongs to him. It doesn't. I am not property. I am not a tool. I'm a person, and I deserve to be treated like one. I don't want revenge. I just want this to stop. I sat down. The courtroom was completely silent. The judge looked at my father for a long moment. Mr. Carver, you are convicted of misdemeanor assault. I am sentencing you to 12 months of probation, 100 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling, and a no-contact order covering the victim's workplace and residence. You will not approach her, contact her, or attempt to communicate with her through third parties without her explicit consent. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Do you understand? My father's face went red. Your Honor, I'm running for city council. A conviction will destroy my campaign. The judge's expression didn't change. Then you should have considered that before you assaulted your daughter. Your campaign is not my concern. Public safety is. Conviction stands. This court is adjourned. He stood. My father's lawyer tried to say something else, but the judge was already walking toward his chambers. I walked out of the courtroom with Karen beside me. My mother tried to intercept me in the hallway. Maya, please. We can fix this. We're family. I looked at her. You had months to fix this. You chose him. You chose Derek. You made your priorities very clear. I kept walking. Behind me, I heard her start to cry. I didn't look back. The conviction became public record within hours. The same reporter who'd written the first article wrote a follow-up. City council candidate convicted of assault, sentenced to probation and counseling. Campaign officially suspended. The article included details from the hearing. The footage. The no-contact order. The judge's statement that being a parent does not grant immunity from assault charges. It got picked up by a regional news site, then by a politics blog. Someone on Twitter screenshot the article, and it went mildly viral in local political circles with people commenting about how family values candidates always seem to have the worst family situations. My father's campaign page went dark that same day. His signs came down within the week. The local radio station quietly removed his interview from their website. The community groups he'd been speaking at stopped inviting him. In the family group chat I'd left, according to my cousin Sarah, who later reached out to me privately, the reaction split into two camps. One side, led by my mother and Derek, insisted I'd ruined everything and turned my back on family. The other side, mostly younger cousins and one aunt, quietly said things like, I always thought the way they treated Maya was wrong. Good for her for standing up for herself. Remember when he did something similar to Aunt Linda's oldest daughter? She never reported it, but we all knew. The cracks in my father's image started spreading. People remembered other incidents, other controlling behaviors. Other times he'd used his temper to get his way. My mother sent me one final email 3 weeks after the hearing. It was long, rambling, and full of phrases like, we only wanted what's best for you, and you'll regret this when you're older, and your father is a good man who made one mistake. I didn't reply. Derek sent a message through a mutual acquaintance asking if I'd reconsider helping with childcare now that things have calmed down. I blocked the acquaintance. Jen posted a vague status about people who value money over blood and got ratioed in the comments by people who'd seen the news articles. She deleted it. My father, Meanwhile, lost his office job. His employer, a property management company, had a clause in their employment contract about criminal convictions. Even a misdemeanor was enough to trigger a review. They let him go quietly. He found work as a sales associate at a hardware store about 30 minutes outside of town. I heard through Sarah that he and my mother downsized to a smaller house because they couldn't afford the mortgage on their old place without his previous salary. The new house was in a different neighborhood. Older, smaller, farther from the church they'd attended for 20 years. Derek and Jen, faced with the reality that I wasn't coming to save them, hired a part-time nanny, which they apparently could afford after all. Sarah told me that Jen complained about it constantly in the family chat, posting passive-aggressive comments about how expensive everything is when you can't rely on family. Nobody responded to her posts anymore. As for me, I kept my job. 6 months after the hearing, I got another promotion to senior compliance analyst with a salary bump that let me move into a better apartment in a quieter neighborhood with actual parking and a balcony. I started therapy using the company's mental health benefits and worked through a lot of the guilt and anger I'd been carrying for years. My therapist helped me understand that what my family did wasn't normal, that I wasn't selfish for wanting to keep my career, that their demands were designed to keep me small and controllable. I reconnected with the cousins who'd reached out and built friendships with people who actually respected me. I joined a book club. I started going to the gym. I adopted a cat named Pepper who sleeps on my desk while I work from home. I go to the mountains on weekends sometimes. I read. I cook meals I actually enjoy instead of eating whatever was cheapest. I live a quiet, stable life that belongs entirely to me. No one orders me around. No one threatens me. No one tells me my value is measured by how much I sacrifice for someone else. About a year after the hearing, I ran into my father at a grocery store. I was in the produce section picking out apples when I saw him at the end of the aisle in a hardware store polo shirt, looking tired and older than I remembered. He saw me at the same time. We made eye contact. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something. I turned and walked to a different aisle. I didn't need to hear whatever he had to say. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need closure from him. I'd already found it on my own. I still think about my family sometimes. Not with longing. Not with regret. Just with a kind of distant sadness for what could have been if they'd ever seen me as a person instead of a resource. But I don't go back. I don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize in case it's them trying to reach me through someone else's phone. I keep the no-contact order paperwork in a folder in my desk, just in case. And when people ask if I'm close with my family, I smile and say, I have the family I chose, and that's enough. My father once told me my life belonged to him, or I was dead to them. Turns out, being dead to them was the best thing that ever happened to me. What died wasn't me. It was the version of myself that believed I owed them everything just because we shared blood. The version that thought their approval mattered more than my own safety and dignity. The version that stayed quiet while they treated me like property. That version is gone, and I've never felt more alive.